data, you're looking at the growth that you expect the students to get, and you're including that in your SLO, along with that overall high-reaching goal that you would like, them all to get 80% or better. There are things that we don't have within our control when our students leave us every day. So we need to be able to have that flexibility in showing growth, not just everybody getting to mastery. Are there any questions on SLOs or evaluation or anything?
Are teachers required to use standardized testing in their SLO?
Teachers are not required to use standardized testing in their SLO. And one of the discussions that we had because of SchoolNet is our unit exams. Once you give them to the students online, the students can't go in and take them again. So if you're going to use those as your pre and post test, which we kind of prefer you don't, but if you're going to use those, you need to give them a hard copy the first time and then collect that back and then have them do online for your post-test. The textbook, in most cases, I know with math, we have a pre-test in each of the units that you could give from the textbook and use that as a post-test. In science, I wrote my own pre and post test for the whole year. So it's up to you what you're going to do. It does not have to be the AZ Merit. It does not have to be a standardized test. It's up to you.
Just over a unit like it used to?
Yes, it can. It just has to be over a unit. It does not have to be over the whole year. It could be over multiple units if you want to look over multiple units. The purpose of the SLO is that it is in the teacher's hands. You are deciding what you want to work on that year with your students to both make them better prepared based off of what you saw your students do the year before. Like, gosh, transformations, I'm not really sure I taught that really well, so I'm going to focus on that this year and see if what I do has a bigger effect.
So last year, I teach special ed, and we have this reading program that they get us called Unique, and it's science and social studies. It's informational. We have a unit every month, and it has a pre-test and a post-test. I used one of those units.
Yep.
So it was just 1 month as my SLO, and everything was online. So I really didn't even have a lot of evidence. But I had all the scores from all the testing, and that was fine.
And the scores are your evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scores are your evidence.
Yes, they are.
And if anybody needs any help, has any questions, you can always email me. I've sent out in the past samples of SLOs that have been written so that if you need help on wording or help on setting up that growth model, how to word it, how to set it up, what the ranges should possibly be, I will be happy to help anybody with that. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to turn it over to Nell.
Oh, can I just say a comment, if you don't mind?
Go ahead.
I don't know if I'm loud enough, but last year you suggested buying a book that was over, over your eval, buying the book of the person that it was based on.
Madeline Hunter.
Yes, and I bought that book, and it helped me at the end of the year when I went to go do my evaluation and talk and that kind of stuff, to have points and show like, that I was prepared and knew what I was talking about. And so that's something you can buy on Amazon that I think is a good resource for teachers to have that'll help you with your own data collection and some of that kind of stuff.
Thanks, Jessica.
So I'm Nell Pedersen. I'm the Arizona Education Association organizational consultant that has the wonderful opportunity to work with the Peoria Education Association. And I'm very proud of the work that the leaders have done this summer, both to get ready and also to plan for an effective year of providing advocacy, support, and other opportunities for members to engage. So the presentation I'm going to be talking about is called, it's about the Every Student Succeeds Act. And I kind of like the way Barb did it by being off camera for most part. So I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going over here and then I will continue to talk. So, there are some slides in this PowerPoint that I'm not going to go over just because they are no longer relevant because they had to do with giving information by August 1. So, and Barb's going to be the person who's going to do it. So, it took nearly 14 years of NEA and other bodies to ask for less federal intrusion into the teaching and learning process. And it's finally here. And we lost the, did you lose the lights on purpose?
Yes, he did.
Okay. It's finally here. We have opportunities for educators to drive the teaching and learning. We have an opportunity to strengthen partnerships with parents and communities and to advocate for what students really need. But we must work together to defeat the bad ideas and policies at the federal level and state level that do not benefit students. So, next. NEA had several goals when they worked to get this Elementary and Secondary Education Act reauthorized, which, as you know, used to be called No Child Left Behind. They wanted to promote equity through a new accountability system with a dashboard, with an opportunity dashboard as its centerpiece. That opportunity dashboard would use multiple measures of school effectiveness so that we would argue not to use the system that's currently in statute in Arizona that gives us the A through F label. We want to decouple high stakes testing from an accountability, promote less testing to give students more time to learn, and ensure that qualified educators are in the position and empowered in order to lead. So we had a huge opportunity. Members said they wanted resources, they wanted a network and support, and they wanted a voice. So the opportunities provided by ESSA, again, is the opportunity dashboard, building local capacity through associations working with community partners, and having educator-driven policies as opposed to policies driven far away from Washington, D.C. or driven by lobbyists or legislators. So what's gone? AYP is gone. No more 100 ways to fail. Federal punitive labels for schools are gone. You used to have to meet a certain level of AYP or else your school went into school improvement, and then you had to do different models like fire half the teachers. There's no more race to the top. There's no more federally required teacher evaluations based on standardized test scores. Now, unfortunately in Arizona, we have state statutes. We have 3 state statutes that dictate to us how teacher evaluations have to be tied to student test scores. Remains to be seen, but I believe that one of the things that AEA will be working on is, with all of your help and activity and action, is rolling those statutes back. Next. So the Every Student Succeeds Act, this is what still remains in the law. So every state has to have college and career ready standards. Every state still has to give statewide assessments in grades 3 through 8. But there are opportunities for high schools to give different assessments. And also, Arizona passed a law last year that said that school districts should have a menu to choose for assessments. So the law in Arizona and the federal regulations from ESSA are not quite in sync. So it will remain to be seen how that plays out. Arizona is going to apply to be one of the 7 states that's a pilot state for doing different kinds of assessments for the accountability system. They still have to disaggregate data. There are more subgroups that are delineated that students have to achieve in those subgroups. And there are still interventions for low-performing schools, but those are going to be decided at the state level, the interventions. So what's different about accountability? Accountability systems at the state level cannot be based solely on standardized tests. They can include math and reading assessments, graduation rates, another statewide indicator for middle and elementary schools. They have to include English language proficiency, and they have to include at least one other indicator of student and school supports. And that might be some measure of how the wellness of your students, how often do they come to school, how engaged is your community. There's a whole variety of different indicators. We'll have to see if the federal regulations are going to let that happen. There's a little bit of a conflict between the Congress people that wrote ESSA and the Federal Department of Education. So what about school improvement? They'll still have to identify 2 different kinds of schools. Subgroup schools, where schools have underperforming subgroups, and lower performing schools, the bottom 5% of Title I schools. So there still will be school improvement required. So what about educator voice? There's lots of engagement and specific mention of teachers, but also para-educators and special instructional support personnel like nurses, counselors in decision making. It maintains that paraprofessionals have to have the qualifications in math and language arts if they're going to be providing instruction under the guidance of a teacher.